Hello everyone, this week is Parsha Pinhas, and in this Parsha we read that God rewarded Pinhas for his act of zealotry. As related in Parsha Balak, Zimri, a leader from the tribe of Shimon, had relations with a non-Jewish woman named Cosbi in full view of Moshe and the entire nation. Pinhas zealously stabbed Zimri and Cosbi to death, an act that brought to a sudden halt a devastating divine plague that had killed 24,000 people who had sinned with the women of Moab. The concept of zealotry requires explanation. The Torah certainly mandates executing sinners, but only under very specific circumstances, and only within the system and framework of Bet Din, rabbinical court. The culprit must have been very clearly warned immediately before committing the act. 2 witnesses must testify to the incident. The witnesses are interrogated by the court, and the court must thoroughly discuss and deliberate the matter before sentencing the sinner to death. Why is Pinhas rewarded for his violent act? Does the Torah encourage anybody who feels incensed about a particular crime to go ahead and kill the transgressor? Furthermore, if we look at the first instance of Jewish zealotry, we will find that it met with harsh condemnation. In Sefer Bereshit, the Torah tells the story of Dinah, the daughter of Yaakov Avinu and Leah, who was violated in the city of Shechem. 2 of her brothers, Shimon and Levi, reacted to this crime by killing every male in the city. When they returned home, expecting their father, Yaakov, to laud them for their heroic zealotry, he censured them for their violent conduct. Before his death, Yaakov again berated Shimon and Levi, accusing them of stealing the attributes of violence and bloodshed from their uncle Esau. Yaakov very clearly felt that violent zealotry against sinners is not the Jewish way. Shimon and Levi usurped it from Esau. Why then did God reward Pinhas? Why did Shimon and Levi's zealotry meet with harsh condemnation, while Pinhas's act earned God's approval and blessing? The answer is that the Torah condones zealotry on the condition that it is motivated by nothing other than the pure, sincere concern to avenge God's honor. If a zealot's motives are even minimally fueled by any personal interests, he loses the right to do an act of zealotry. If the zealot acts with even a tinge of ulterior motives, in the interest of settling old accounts, because of his personal dislike for the sinner, or with any sense of enjoyment or gratification, then the moral high ground is lost and the zealotry becomes an act of murder. If a zealot's motives are even slightly fueled by any personal interests, he loses the right to zealotry. After Yaakov's initial condemnation of Shimon and Levi's attack on Shechem, the brothers responded, "Should our sister be made into a harlot?" Perhaps unwittingly, Shimon and Levi here confessed to the ulterior motives that prompted their act of zealotry. They reacted as they did because of what was done to our sister. Their anger resulted not from the insult to God, but from the insult to them, the infringement on their family honor. Their own mouths testified that what they committed was not an act of pure zealotry, but rather a violent reaction to personal insult. In Parsha Pinhas, God himself testifies to Pinhas's sincerity and the purity of his motives. Several times in this narrative, the Torah speaks of Zimri as Israel, the Jewish man, rather than identifying him by name. The Torah therefore emphasizes that Zimri's identity was entirely irrelevant as far as Pinhas was concerned. Pinhas did not act as he did because of any personal vendetta against Zimri, but rather because a Jewish man perpetrated this grievous offense. His zealotry was sincere, and he was therefore rewarded. No one today can assume the mantle of kanut, zealotry, because no one today can claim perfectly pure motives without any element of personal interest. Even Moshe Rabbeinu refrained from killing Zimri because of the possible involvement of ulterior motives. The Midrash tells that Zimri first approached Moshe and argued that he is permitted to take Cosbi, a woman from Midian, just as Moshe had married Zipporah, a Midianite. Moshe therefore could not respond zealously as Pinhas did, because an element of personal resentment would possibly be involved. All the more so then, we must not engage in zealous behavior of any kind. We may not even assume the right to humiliate people for their lack of observance, because there is always the possibility that some settling of personal accounts is what motivates such a response. And when we must point out to others their mistakes, it must be done very delicately, with the utmost respect and concern for the individual's feelings, rather than with a patronizing attitude of arrogance and one-upmanship. Rebuke and criticism are warranted only if one speaks with the pure sincere desire to correct the individual's flaws, and not as a means of experiencing a sense of superiority. Thank you for listening, and Shabbat Shalom.